Boys Tomato Sauce in here, and I've got a video for you tonight. We are ranking classic WoW duos. So essentially, we already threw out a classic WoW leveling tier list. It was on solo leveling. Tonight, I am going to focus on some of the best duo partnerships, rank them on this tier list, and tell you why I think they deserve to be in the spot that they're in. So, without further ado, boys, let's get started. Should we start at the front or the back? Double rogue or double mage? I think we'll start out with the absolute heaviest hitters. If you've watched my video on how to shatter combo perfectly with your frost mage, you'll know that the best way to shatter combo is to have two mages. And boys, I gotta tell you, whether you're AoE farming in the open world or you happen to be in a dungeon group with all your boys, two frost mages is always better than one. And these are this combo. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to start off with a bang. This combo is the absolute best combo in the game, bar none. Double Hunter is close, but it's not quite two frost mages. Two frost mages, you can solo dungeons with them. You can do your ZF pulls as a single frost mage, but two frost mages makes it even nicer. Open world, you can pull packs of mobs together into one massive double shatter combo of insanity. Yeah, and if anybody messes with you in PvP, and I'm absolutely making that a part of my list, between massive polymorphs in classic WoW, the fact that many classes cannot dispel them, Novas just being one of the best CCs in the game, period, the end. Two frost mages are very difficult to deal with. One frost mage is hard to beat, but two frost mages, they've got just about everyone's number at that point. So I'm going to say double frost mage, absolutely S tier. The best comp in the game, period, if you are duo leveling with your friends. But that's not to say that none of the following comps are fun. So let's go to the back of the list and let's move on to double rogue. Double rogue is a lot of fun. It's definitely super grief on a PvP server, but here's where double rogue doesn't really fit in where double mage does. Double rogue in a dungeon group is kind of right? Rogues are more single target focused in classic WoW. If you're out in open world, you're probably playing subtlety. A lot of people level as combat as well, but even when you level combat and you eventually get blade flurry, it's a 2-minute cooldown versus a warrior whose sweeping strikes is every 30 seconds, right? So they don't have the best AoE. They have great single target, but you really can't fit this comp into a dungeon group if you're trying to move quick, right? So for that reason and for that reason alone, because they are, great in open world, but they're not too great in a dungeon group, I would put double rogue as C tier. Overall, it's a lot of fun. You can have fun on a lower tier, right? Duo comp. But you're not going to break any records on double rogue. But again, it's fun open world, just not that great in dungeons. Let's move on to rogue paladin. Now, a lot of people probably thinking, what are you doing? Rogue paladin, right? Rogue holy paladin? Why wouldn't you just play warrior paladin? Well, because Scooby-Doo is coming for you. And Ret Rogue actually levels quite fast. The first 25 levels on Ret Rogue absolutely fly by. That's right, Retribution Paladin and, Rogue. And it's a good time. You could play subtlety, you could play combat, but it's kind of a little lawnmower that you have going on. Scooby-Doo actually started off in classic WoW. It didn't even take till TBC to get good. This comp has been a great leveling comp the whole way through. And because you have a paladin, they can flex heal in dungeons and fit that rogue in. So for that reason and for that reason alone, I would put Ret Rogue as B tier. I would definitely put them ahead of double rogue, and they are quite fast at leveling through those early levels together. So Ret Rogue, middle of the pack, a very solid choice. Let's go next to Beast Cleave. And what I'm looking at with Beast Cleave is Hunter Enhancement Shaman. And I think this is really a solid play. I don't quite think it's A tier. Although really anything with a hunter almost has to be A tier because it's so fast. And Shaman's movement speed can match that hunter movement speed the whole way through the game. So you're in a really solid spot with your first 40 levels. The Shaman playing enhancement and the hunter playing, beast mastery. And you should just fly through the content. The petal tank for you guys. Shaman buffs can go on the pet and the hunter. And overall, you guys are going to move pretty quick. I would actually say Beast Cleave is an A tier comp because it has a hunter in it, and hunter can carry just about anything that comes with it within reason, right? Some things are just going to slow the hunter down so much that you wouldn't really want to pair them with it. Let's go into the front of the line now, right? Speaking of hunters, double hunter, right? This is a comp. It's one of the fastest duo comps in the game. Unfortunately, much like double rogue, you can't really fit into dungeon groups here because nobody's going to take 2 hunters to a dungeon group. But the speed at which double hunter levels through the world actually has to just earn it an S tier spot. It's absurd. If you thought one hunter went through the world quickly, knocked out elite quest fast, well, add another hunter to the mix, and you have like the single target double mage group where double mage can pull any group of mobs on the planet, right? And just absolutely knock them out with these massive shatter combos. Double hunter can do anything in the game open world, and it's extremely oppressive in PvP. You can't really get the jump on 2 hunters, especially 2 beast mastery hunters, where maybe the only thing that stops this easily because of how well hunter can kite is the double mage, because you have the novas for the pets. You can poly the pets and then focus down one of the hunters, and eventually the mages win because they have 2 ice blocks, right? But double hunter will shred a lot. It does a ton of damage. You're gonna fly through quests. This is like a world breaker, you know what I mean? Comp. So I think it deserves to be up there with double mage, even though it doesn't have all the flexibility that double mage has in dungeon group. Let's go next into feral shaman, right? We have a feral druid and an enhancement shaman. You could slot this a couple different ways. You could go Ellie Boomkin. You could go resto enhance, but why, right? Break out the cat form, break out the enhancement shaman, and just absolutely move viciously and quickly through the world after level 20, mind you, with your druid. Now, this comp can pretty much do anything in the game open world as well, because where the feral can't stay cat form all the time, they can just go bear form, do a ton of damage still, and have an enhancement shaman or a restoration shaman throwing them off heals. So this comp is awesome. Druid has travel form. The shaman will be running around in Ghost Wolf. Those first 40 levels will fly by, and then 40 to 60 will go just as quick. Let's jump into Warlock and Paladin. I'm personally looking at Warlock Prot Paladin because it is a true god comp specialization. The Warlock is just dotting mobs from all over the world, pulling them into that Prot Paladin consecration blender. Eventually, the Prot Paladin gets thread off the Warlocks, especially if you're in farming undead mobs with your Warlock buddy. And you guys can just AoE pull to your heart's content. The lock never has to stop because they can life tap, and then the Paladin can heal the lock and keep them going. Overall, this comp moves very quickly through the game. It's great for dungeons. It's great for open world. It doesn't have the speed, the pack-to-pack speed that you have with double hunters, and it doesn't quite have the AoE potential of double mage, but it's a great comp nonetheless, and you will absolutely blast through content with Warlock Prot Paladin. Let's jump into Mage Priest. Listen, it's very difficult to find a mage comp that isn't going to be A tier, because mage in classic WoW are the kings of leveling, and then when you throw a priest into the mix that can help out the mage's mana regen, give it a nice shield, right? Just to add to its other shields. We got mana shield. We've got the freaking frost shield. We've got power word shield coming from the priest. We're gonna pull a bunch of mobs together. We're gonna AOE them down with the mage, big shatter combo, as well as the priest, you know, holy novaing along with that mage. Yeah, there's a lot you can do with this combo. And again, you slot into every dungeon group when you have a healer and the best AoE DPS in the game. So mage priest is looking really good. I wouldn't call them S tier, but I would say high A tier, absolutely. Probably the highest A tier. We'll just leave them here. But I would say the highest A tier of everything we have on the table right. Next, Warlock Druid, another A tier comp. This class is awesome. Not quite as good as Warlock Paladin, but you could play the boomy version of Restoration, where you go a little deeper into the boomy tree. You know, off heal your Paladin, keep the hots going on him, or excuse me, off heal your Warlock, keep the hots rolling while you're dotting with Moonfire, Insect Swarm, etc., pulling mobs into your Warlock. He's dotting everything. Things are dying all around you. You guys move through quests super quick, lightning speed. The only problem is the Warlock in those first 40 levels will not be able to move as fast as the Druid, so that is why I have this down on the A tier. But overall, this is a great leveling spec. This is more for a caster Druid, though, not as much on the feral side. And again, right, all of these S tier and A tier specializations are insane in PvP as well, right? So not only can they blast through the PvE content, but they're also completely shredding people in PvP. You wouldn't want to run into any of these duos. Really, the only one I'd really want to run into out of all this is probably Double Hunter, or anyone in general, because I'll absolutely slap you guys. But outside of that, right, you know, these are some strong combos if they're played by the right people. Next, we have jungle, right? So we're going Hunter Feral here, or Hunter Resto. And you're just giving that Hunter more sustain, but he doesn't really need it, right? Hunter doesn't really need anybody. So I think that's why you go Feral here. And if you do that, I would honestly say with the pace at which Druids move through, you know, leveling after level 20, that you have a B tier. You have a B tier. It's hard to have, if the Shaman is A tier, then you got to say Feral Druid is A tier as well, right? So Hunter Feral, Hunter Shaman, much like Mage and Warlock, it's going to be difficult not to have an A tier leveling duo specialization because these classes start to complement each other so well. That's what Classic WoW really did. It allowed the classes to complement each other and just be good across the board, right? So, you know, it's where they lack in single play, right? Like Warrior and Paladin, you know, when they team up with a Warlock, with a Rogue, with, you know, a Warrior, these classes end up, you know, a Shaman, they end up just meshing so well that, you know, you see some really cool stuff come together. Next, we have Warlock Priest. This can be played as either Shadow Priest or Discipline, and you're in a good spot either way. The Shadow Priest can still help that Warlock sustain with shields. Shadow Priest mana is a little but, you know, as long as you're keeping Shadow Word Pain on the mobs, that's great damage per mana. You know, and the Warlock is just pulling everything in. You're doing your Shadow Priest things, become this crazy dot cleave. On top of that, if you run into anybody in PvP playing Athlock Shadow Priest in Classic WoW, they are going to regret running into you guys. Maybe double Rogue if the two Rogues open on the Warlock, right? Get the jump on him, take him out in a stun, then they can turn on the Shadow Priest and try to, you know, get him out that way cheaply. Outside of that, I don't think anybody wants to run into Warlock Shadow Priest open world. It is a very difficult comp to come up against, especially in the duos. But let's start talking about Warriors, boys. Finally, we're speaking our language, right? The channel's language. I know we mess around on other classes, but we're always Warriors at heart. And the absolute best Warrior composition in Classic WoW is Warrior Shaman. You can play this as Resto or Enhance. I personally prefer Enhance. I like to be a little bit more offensive, but Restoration works just as well. And why? Because you're Horde, you're an Orc, and you've got Wind Fury Totem. Simple as that, boys. You're chasing Wind Fury. and you're going to have incredible sustain. Really, a warrior just needs a healer to start opening his wings, right? And the best healer for a warrior is a shaman. But you know who's not too far behind is his paladin buddies as well. Paladin's going to give that warrior freedom. So if you guys walk into a mage team where the warrior shaman duo really needs to kind of global that guy in a wind fury, the paladin duo, they got freedom, right? They're going to chase you down. You can still, catch that mage and, light him up, right? So you also have a big fat Hodge that the shaman team does not have, but shaman does get some other great perks outside of it. So these are two great specs, and they're both A tier, right? You have the Alliance version and you have the Horde version. So very, very strong duos. And again, right, complementing the class's weaknesses. Warrior is so bad without a shaman or a paladin, in the leveling process up until you get very geared, right? Until you're in like Prebis. But prior to that, you got to hang out with your boys. You got to duo a little bit. It's not always worth solo gameplay in Classic WoW. It's about team, right? And then on top of that, where we're going next, we are absolutely going to Mage Paladin. And I got to say, it's a good spec. It's definitely good, right? Warlock Paladin, you have S tier. I think Mage Paladin's A tier. I don't think it's as good as Warlock Paladin. Here's why. It kind of is, to be honest with you. Well, the Warlock can kind of just bring everything in, right, with dots into this blender in the middle. You've got the Warlock pet. The Mage is a little bit more vulnerable and doesn't have the ease of pulling that the Warlock does. I would say Mage Pally, is probably... I don't even think it's on the same level as Mage Priest. I think there's way more synergies with Mage Priest. Maybe if you go Mage Prop Pally, then you're starting to cook with gas in the AoE farm. I think it's still A tier. Again, right? Anything that has a mage, a hunter, or a warlock is going to be A tier. And then warrior over here, it just, all of the weaknesses go away with a shaman and a holy paladin, right? You have so much synergy with those two classes that you really can't help but be A tier again. Now let's go with Rogue Priest. And Rogue Priest, I think, is a solid middle of the pack specialization. I think it's better than Warrior Priest, because Warrior Priest, as we'll get into, they have some things that don't really synergize, right? Power Word Shield and Rage, they don't really mix. So a warrior goes into a mob, he's got Power Word Shield on him, and he can't gain Rage, right? I know people like Warrior Priest because they're both kind of slow, but at that point, I'd rather just play Rogue Priest. And you could play this as Shadow as well once you hit 40. So you take Sub-Rogue Shadow Priest from 40 to 60. I mean, that's one of the most threatening combinations you can run into in Classic WoW from a PvP perspective. I just think it'll be a little slow on the leveling side. But fine in middle of the pack. And again, you can slot this into a dungeon group for sure. So solid middle of the pack. And I think Warrior Priest is there also. I know a lot of people like this, but I can't get over, if the class that you're playing with costs you Rage by shielding you, then, that's probably not the best synergy. It's middle of the pack at best to me. I've played it. I really didn't like it. I much prefer playing with a shaman or a paladin. It's night and day on a war. And then Warrior Druid, again, right? Middle of the pack. It's middle of the pack. It's not bad. You can maintain your threat a little bit better because the Druid can keep thorns on you. So that's just more, damage you're putting out, more threat there. You're going to get the gift of, nature's gift buff from the Druids. It's solid. It's a solid, middle of the pack specialization. It is not on the same tier as Shaman or Paladin are with Warriors. So I think they're middle of the pack. And then last but not least, I am going to grade something a little bit interesting. We're going to talk about Warlock, specifically Destro Lock, with, you heard it, Elemental Shaman. And I have two friends that have played this. Uh, Although it is not the best from a PvE perspective, it definitely deserves a mention on the C tier, the what I call the PvP tier. So Warlock Elemental Shaman is a good time. You'll have a lot of fun with this, just like you would have fun on Double Rogue. You know, you can flex into dungeon groups, but you know, you're more of an open world duo and you're out there to just try to one shot somebody, right? Just completely blow them up. And you'll notice the D tier is missing. That's reserved for ridiculous comps like double warrior or double paladin. Uh, you know, that's pretty much it, right? Those are probably the only two comps I can think to put on the D tier off the top of my head. I tried to limit this a little bit so the video wouldn't be too long. I know I did kind of go a little bit overboard, but I really enjoy Classic WoW, and I wanted to put out this duo ranking tier list because I thought it would be a lot of fun, especially with all of the vigor and life that has been returning to the Classic WoW scene. So I'm going to plug the white main server once again. You can find me and my squad there. It is a good time, guys. Make sure you come back. Check out Classic Era, right? We've got a month until the next season starts in retail, and we have a real lull in content in Wrath of the Lich King. This is the perfect time to come back to Classic, level a new character, have some fun in open world PvP, experience the journey, and try out one of these awesome duo leveling comps. Pretty much anything but double warrior or double paladin. All right. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Have a nice day. Have a nice week. Have a nice month. And have a great year. Tomato sauce and out. Double mage in. That's what I'm playing this time. Just FYI. It's a good time. Take it easy, guys.